Psychology really taught me how to operationalize attention, retention.
We live in an incredibly noisy world. We're constantly fighting the battle of getting our audience's attention and being memorable. How do we work against that?
The key is that's how you nail down storytelling. The thing with long-term memory is that think of your brain as a library where information is stored. The tricky part is how information can be retrieved after a certain amount of time. Emotion can be used to remember something.
Inside Out is a great example to symbolize this, but the whole premise of that is how emotion plays a part in the whole conflict between memory and attention.
You see all these like ads that are putting in statistics out there. I wouldn't remember statistics.
As marketers, we're brand builders, we're storytellers, but also we're world builders.
There's this really cool Japanese filmmaker. His name is Akira Kurosawa. If you see new filmmakers today, they apply the same concept of Akira Kurosawa's way of storytelling, which is showing and not telling.
I think that also evidently showed that telling a story is a great way to build an emotional connection.
Attention is important, but then you have to also cater to its like sister, which is retention. Psychology really taught me how to operationalize different attributes. So basically trying to measure something like attention or retention or engagement and stuff like that. And that's something that is really important when it comes to marketing, because that's the resource that we're trying to take advantage, not take advantage, but that's the resource that we're trying to like gather, attention and retention.
Yeah, I think just building on that, we live in an incredibly noisy world, and it's harder than ever now to capture attention. So we're constantly fighting the battle of getting our audience's attention and being memorable. So how do we work against that?
Well, the key is not really in attention. Attention is important, but then you have to also cater to its like sister, which is retention.
Yeah.
So the way memory works is that attention can be either long-term or short-term. Short-term is when like you're trying to memorize like a phone number just so you could input it on your computer and stuff like that. And then after that, that's gone. Like you see waiters and waitresses in restaurants like taking your order. They remember that, they bring it back to you, and then the next day they'll forget about it. They won't even remember any like orders that they served, any customers that they served that night.
Right.
But the thing with long-term memory is that it's something that think of your brain as a library where information is stored. Now the tricky part is how information can be retrieved after a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And I know we also like talked about Inside Out a little bit, and you do see like shelves and shelves of memories, but then there were some memories that were already blacked out because the retrieval processes has been cut off and they haven't been retrieved for a long time, so you just forget about it.
So based off that example, I think Inside Out is a great example to symbolize this, but the whole premise of that is how emotion plays a part in the whole conflict between memory and attention. So how can we use emotion as marketers?
That's a really good question, because memory is easily retained through emotion. Memory is easily retained through emotion. In fact, it's one of the best ways on how you get your brand to be remembered. Like the more you see all these like ads that are more logical or like more rational, putting in like, I don't know, statistics out there and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't remember statistics.
No.
But I would remember something humanized that's associated to that statistic. Something that that's like a story that I could relate to. you know? And taking that takes me back. Like when I was younger, I used to watch like commercials were a big thing when we were younger.
Yeah.
Like we grew up during a time where television was still a thing. It's not anymore, unfortunately. But there was this McDonald's ad that was really powerful because there was this grandmother who was trying to eat in the McDonald's restaurant, and then she kept saying her granddaughter's name wrong. Like she was like, "Oh, Gina, like do this, like grab me some water, Gina, blah blah blah." And then the granddaughter kept repeating and correcting her, "Oh, actually that's not my name. My name is like Karen," or something like that. And then towards the end of the commercial, the grandmother, which unfortunately she already has dementia, and when they started eating, she started remembering her granddaughter's real name. And that's one of like, and that's like, I don't know, when I was 10 or 12 years ago, and I could still remember that commercial very well. And that's a testament to how like emotion can be used to remember something. It's basically like the library card that you have. Like you give it to the librarian and your brain tells you, "Oh, I know where this is. This is the information that you need."
So when you're thinking as memory is like in your laptop, you have a hard drive, you have so many gigabytes of data. Memory would take up multiple, like 5-10 gigabytes versus like a random fact or what you had for breakfast this morning quickly disappears.
Yeah, exactly. Like or that stranger like you just passed by in the subway. You know, our brain is made to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So it will not take all the information. Otherwise, it will get overloaded, and that's how your computer dies, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think that's such a great point, because as marketers, like the biggest thing that marketers hate is when a marketing message is overloaded with information and there's 10 call to actions, there's 10 different messages in a single video, so it's confusing the audience. So having that same methodology and idea in mind when you're crafting your message, whether it's an ad, whether it's a video, staying focused on having that single core message and therefore being more memorable in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, but you sometimes Pixar would have this like free lessons.
Yeah.
And one time I got into like the lesson of storytelling,
Yeah.
which ties into what you just said. The simpler the messages, the better. And when it comes to storytelling, one of the best ways, or one of the more solid storylines that you could put out there are storylines that are simple.
Yeah.
Like, say, Toy Story is about like these toys who don't want to be forgotten, you know, or like Finding Nemo is about this kid who wants an adventure and gets lost, you know, at some point.
But the core idea is singular, but there are multiple conflicts and tensions in that storyline. So I think it's so important to have that single one clear idea and then have your opposing forces and conflicts within the storyline to make the audience care.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically that's how you nail down storytelling, and that's how you tell a really good story, by making the message clearer, simpler, and more straightforward, and then just adding little bits of pizzazz here and there.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
This is done.
I want to talk a little bit more. So obviously we talked about attention and memory, but I want to go deeper into like building from that persuasion. So coming from the standpoint of marketing and psychology, we talked earlier about peripheral and central roots of persuasion.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how that works and how you can apply that when you're thinking of marketing and crafting your message?
Well, central. Okay, so the two roots of persuasion is defined as peripheral or central.
Yeah.
Peripheral route to persuasion usually deals with identity, like who you identify with. And so most of this, like you see commercials with, you see products being endorsed by celebrities,
right,
who know nothing, most likely know nothing about the product, but
Yeah.
then you identify with the person, and that's what makes it effective on you,
right,
but not for a long time.
Yeah.
So peripheral routes of persuasion is great if you want to build hype,
yeah,
but when you're trying to build an enduring and more lasting,
like an emotional connection.
or
Yeah.
like something that's like, you know, something that people would just remember, you go to the central route of persuasion, which is basically educating
Yeah.
people, or like putting experts on that pedestal and letting them talk.
Yeah.
And that's how, like, when we as marketers, not make it seem, but like when we showcase that our clients are experts in the field, it's
Yeah.
more enduring. It's something that builds trust, and trust is the next step. Like
Yeah.
attention, retention, then you build trust.
It's like we're following each step of the customer journey just through the lenses of attention, retention, and end goal obviously is conversion.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's super interesting the relationship you said between peripheral and central routes of persuasion. So your peripheral route would, for example, be inserting yourself in a public news narrative or a discourse that's happening right now. Like in the short term, yes, that's great. You're going to be top of the attention in that conversation.
Yeah.
But in the long term, people will quickly forget.
Exactly.
And the next piece of news, goes on and people have all forgot about that.
Yeah.
But if you're hacking into the central root of persuasion, you're building an emotional connection.
You're building, yeah, exactly, an emotional connection. You're building trust with your audience. So that's something that is just essential. It's something that you must do.
And based off your experience, you work with a lot of brands in the energy space, and a huge part of what you do is all about building trust for the brands that you work with and the clients you work with. So how have you found, like, what are some of the best tips that you found in building that relationship and building trust with audiences?
One of the things that I like doing, and this applies to all my brands, is getting to know the clients.
Yeah.
Because once as a marketer and as a person who empathizes, who has the ability to empathize, I like to represent people.
Yeah.
I like to represent real people, and not just an avatar or a brand or a name.
Yeah.
And once I get like who you are, what you stand for, what do you do, what are you good at, and that is basically what opens up to like more I don't know, marketing just becomes better once I get to know.
You're building the bridge between the humanless, faceless brand and the face behind the brand.
Exactly.
Like, people want to buy from people.
Exactly.
People want to buy from people they know and trust, and putting that humanized element to your marketing is so much more powerful than just having a humanless, faceless brand.
Yeah, exactly.
What other methods, not everyone is comfortable putting themselves out there and putting their face behind the brand. So what are some other methods you can do as a brand to humanize and connect with your audience on an emotional level?
That's a really good question. I think one of the powerful tools that we like to use is avatars.
Yeah.
When we create, and this goes hand in hand with our branding team,
Yeah.
who lets us create avatars with their direction and like what makes sense to our clients. And so once you have that tangible thing that people could look at and relate to, it makes it much more easier for you to tell a story.
Yeah.
So then you could start like building consistent visual representation or consistent visual identity for your avatars, where you could place them. I don't know, you could place them in a battlefield, place them in space, stuff like that. And that just like helps retention.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this restaurant in the Philippines that McDonald's absolutely hates because they couldn't like out king it. They couldn't what's the word?
Outmaneuver.
Outmaneuver? Yeah. So basically that's Jollibee. And if you see it's a mascot. It's a big B, red and yellow mascot that roams around the restaurant occasionally, here and there. And then every birthday party, you know, it appears, it dances with your relatives, it flirts with a hot aunt, you know, sometimes there will be a crying child. It will literally like cradle it, you know? And so Jollibee has become this like living and breathing brand that whenever Filipinos see this big B, they would like, that feels like home.
It brings back all of these memories you've had with your family, nostalgia.
Exactly. And that's basically what it plays with. Like you would see this be like going out to the streets, like, oh, the party's over, it has nothing else to do. We go out to the streets, usher in traffic, like do like work, and then you just see it there, and it's like this relatable, humble thing that Filipinos could relate to, and that's a great example of an avatar.
And it's building on the visual identity of your brand as well, and it's so easy to just create a visual embodiment of your brand and just build on that narrative whatever story you want to tell
or character that
exactly you can elicit whatever emotion you want within that avatar and try and not impose that on your audience, but it's a softer approach.
And I find that that's more powerful than actually like imposing. Earlier we talked about how we're more visual than we're, I don't know, language based.
You know that like the classic like clickbait podcast is like, there's a theory that
studies show.
No, but there's a I think the theory is called the picture superiority effect, and essentially the idea is that we're hardwired to remember pictures over words, and I think that's to do with just from a evolutionary standpoint how we've developed as human beings. But naturally, pictures are more memorable than words. Like you remember a face before you remember a name.
Exactly. Yeah, that does make sense because for millennia, our vision has helped us survive even before language could.
Yeah.
Like language came on later after we started like, I don't know, doing agriculture, doing math and stuff like that. But even before that, like that's why bananas are yellow, because you could see it easier than the other fruits, you know. Actually, you know what? That's a wrong causation.
No, but like you can associate certain colors with danger, and that has helped us to survive.
Yeah, exactly.
And not get eaten by like a predator or whatever.
That's it.
But relating that back to marketing, I think it works. It fits well into the principle of marketing should show and not tell.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if you know, I'm sure you know because we've talked about it, but there's this really cool Japanese filmmaker. He's no longer with us now. He's like he's a few generations before us, unfortunately. But his name is Akira Kurosawa. Yeah. And if you see new filmmakers today, like Makoto Shinkai, who made Your Name, or Garden of Words, Suzume, they apply the same concept of Akira Kurosawa's way of storytelling, which is showing and not telling. And in comparison, when you like look at Western movies, it's very dialogue heavy. Not that that's a bad thing, but when Akira Kurosawa tells a story, he uses movement, motion, nature. You know, there was this like really powerful. This is like from one of my favorite movies of all time from Makoto Shinkai, which is called Garden of Words, where they were like running down the stairs, and it was like a very emotionally heavy scene. Yeah. And even though you did not use as much words as possible, you could feel the emotion because there was a storm, and you could feel the wind, you could feel the rain. Everything was, I don't know, you were just there in the moment with them.
You were immersed into the world through the environment.
Exactly. And
rather
once,
than
like,
being told through the dialogue, like, this is how you should
yeah,
feel.
yeah, exactly. Which is like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that type of storytelling at all, because I don't know about you, but I don't like being told what to feel or what to do, you know?
I don't think anybody likes being told what to do, but like allowing your
Yeah.
audience to work it out, you're empowering your audience, and you're showing to them that you trust them to make decisions, and that goes back to the idea of trust.
Exactly.
Like, rather than me forcing my narrative and idea down your throat and saying like, buy this now, you're allowing the customer or the audience to make their decision, their own interpretation of it.
Exactly. Which is a powerful tool, because when we are going through it instead of being told it, it actually creates more neural pathways in our brain that would allow for us to like go back and retain that information. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but this, we talked about a really cool study called mirror neurons, where there was a study about this like chimpanzee. They put like, I don't know what you call those things, and put not MRI, something else.
I know what you're talking about.
They put wires in his brain, and they had the chimpanzee watch another monkey doing something. I don't know. I think it was like picking up a stone or picking up something from the ground. And lo and behold, the same neuronal connection that the monkey that activates in the brain when the monkey is actually doing it activates the same, is basically the same thing when they're watching it. So that's a really interesting thing to think about when you're trying to market your brand out there, and when you're like allowing your audience to create or like follow the idea and make this decision themselves.
You're empowering them to make their own interpretation. And I think that also evidently showed that telling a story is a great way to build an emotional connection with your audience, because the brainwaves of the storyteller synchronize with the listener. So it's such a powerful way to build that emotional connection and build those synapses of memory in your audience's mind.
That's it. That's true. Yeah. Now we have to go back to Akira Kurosawa.
I wanted to, when I was doing when you mentioned him for the first time, I did a little bit of research, and I found something super interesting about him. He filmed and edited all of his films himself. And apparently I was reading like one of his films, like Seven Samurais or something. 4 days after he finished filming, the film was in cinemas.
Wow.
Because he owned the whole process of like recording and editing. And the reason that he focused so heavily on the editing part is that his whole like premise and idea of like cutting scenes on motion is like, he wanted to tell his stories through motion, and having the power to edit and control each scene allowed him to just turn around movies like 4 days after finishing recording.
That's amazing.
And another big thing as well is he was so heavily focused on having a clear idea of what your script and story is, rather than like working it out along the way. So owning and controlling that process is such a great lesson for us to take as marketers. Like, if you've really clearly laid out a story in a clean storyboard, and our video editor Steven's over there, so he's gonna know this very clearly. Like, if you have a clear idea of what exactly your video or whatever story you're trying to tell is, the end product is gonna come out so much cleaner, because you're clear on what the storyline is, versus working it out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Akira Kurosawa did that really, really well, you know. And you still see filmmakers using that style of storytelling, which I find is more effective.
As marketers, we're brand builders, we're storytellers, but also we're world builders. And I know playing video games is something that you have a huge passion for, and immersing yourselves in these like virtual worlds but video game designers are able to build like these super immersive experiences that hack into our attention and our memory. So from like your passion for video games and your experiences doing that, like what have you learned that you're able to take inspiration from and apply to your campaigns and your marketing?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I love video games. I grew up with video games, and fun fact,
Yeah.
I was into video games during a time where people were villainizing it, were actually like saying, "Oh, video games make people violent or make people like, I don't know, guns and stuff like that," which is not true. I think humans will find a way to be violent even without gaming. You can't blame gaming. But most of the games I played were heavily story based. And I was a big reader growing up. I like to read novels. I was always in their library, and then lo and behold, like this new technological thing came out, which is games, which allowed me to actually like immerse in a world that other than just like reading the story, looking from the outside looking in.
Like
games
a three-dimensional
and that's
example.
like so amazing, and I always want to bring that feeling. And I know like as marketers we're kind of limited because like where do we post? We do LinkedIn, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and stuff like that. But I still want and I still like immersing the audience in like as much possible, like, or like having a clear storyline all throughout. And so one of the things that really helps me do this is, for one, avatar, we talked about it, and creating consistent visual identity, and creating a clear story, a clear goal, like what are we really doing here, instead of like multiple things coming at you all at once. And just like, allowing people to actually enjoy what we put out there, and not just like, oh, here comes another like, I don't know, propaganda, another like list of another like informational stuff,
infographic or like a case study.
Exactly. So
I think it goes back to like what we spoke about earlier, visual storytelling, and being really intentional about every image that your brand resonates and what is the meaning and the story behind that. Like when you have a clear idea of that narrative, you're building more potential connections that your audience can lean onto from like we spoke about earlier, the peripheral and central roots of persuasion. So it's more opportunities for you to connect with your audience if you're coming from this really creative standpoint and trying to build stories through the brand symbols and visual identities that your brand holds.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the fun part. That's the fun part about marketing, You get to like take your client's brand, take in their story, learn about them. And I don't know, like I feel like we in this day and age, people like to create lines and boundaries and like put people in boxes and stuff like that. But like when we do marketing, we get to know our clients. Like they may be like in different backgrounds compared to our background. Like it's like night and day. But then you get to know them, and that's like you're kind of like, it's the same concept of you entering into their world, and then now it's your job to like tell people about that and how awesome that is, and how like the cool things that they do. So I don't know, I find that cool.
It definitely, working in marketing, like you have so much freedom to explore your creativity, and I know that's something that you're very good at.
Thank you.
But how do you, like, I don't think every marketer is, there's so many different types of marketing. You can go through a much more data-centric element of marketing that is more growth heavy and focused. But how do you keep that balance between data, rationality, and then more out-of-box thinking and creative, creativity?
I actually don't know, to be honest. I just like I have a mix of all of them. I have a mix of like data is nice, you know, it positions your brands into as experts in the field, so that like tackles the central root of persuasion, a relatively more enduring way for your for the audience to like remember you and stick with you.
Yeah.
And then we also try to tap into that emotional association when it comes to retention and memory. And so like when people remember a brand, they remember a feeling associated to it. Exactly. This is why like it's very hard for people to move on after a really bad breakup, because there's memory associated with it, you know? And so, and then we also have this, what's the other one? We also have retention, and that comes in with, or sorry, we have attention, and that's where like our like immersive world comes in, our visual identity comes in, and we have like this like really talented graphic designers and videographers here at Midnight that does a really good job in like representing your brand. And I've seen that like so many like cool stuff that I want to frame, but you know, but yeah, basically it has to be a balance of all of that.
We've covered a lot of great detail on attention, memory, visual storytelling, but I want to end off just with a little segment of, we use AI a lot in our workflows, and we've had some interesting experiences. Let me put it that way, with Midjourney.
Yeah.
So I want to start something new. I want to start a Midjourney abomination of the week.
Hell yes. Well, well, there's this one that Sarah showed me yesterday, which is Spider-Man who likes to listen to Sabrina Carpenter. I'm not gonna tell you what it looks like, but you'll see it. And then you looked up there like it was
it's on the screen.
It's on the screen. And then we also have we tried to make real life handsome Shrek. Well, handsome is relative, and this is what Midjourney thinks handsome is.
Yeah.
And then we also have soggy burgers, because we were supposed to have a happy hour grilling at one of our colleagues' backyard, but it rained, so here are some soggy burgers that was supposed to have a face but have a mouth instead. So enjoy.
Yeah, I think I've been completely traumatized by Midjourney, and I refuse to use it ever again.
I love it.
I mean, I love the entertaining aspect of, like, I don't know how many fingers or toes or body parts are going to display when I'm trying to portray a human being. So yeah, maybe steer away from Midjourney in your marketing, but just if you want to be entertained,
yeah, absolutely,
play around with some prompts. But it's a pretty great tool, but personally I prefer to use a graphic designer.
Actual humans.
Yeah.
Actual humans are better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just to end off, Karla, we've talked about hacking central and peripheral roots of persuasion. And obviously we want to get, we want to make sure our listeners are hitting the subscribe button. So can you tell us in Filipino how to say will you subscribe?
Mag-subscribe to not your story. Or like, wait, how do you say it in full Filipino? Mag-subscribe sa Not Your Story by Midnight Marketing. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Okay. So mag-subscribe na.